Um, CEO, I've
Hello.
I've got you again. And I think although there's so much going on today, I thought it would be really useful if we talked about Poland and Ukraine and your take on the. So first of all, do you think this was an accident? Do you think this was a
No,
You don't. Okay, let's get
no, no.
that out of the way.
One drone could be an accident. Two would be a serious error. Three, somebody should be losing their job. 19? No, that's provocation.
Yes, there's a
Or a
second
test, more
question.
accurately.
There's a second question, and I ask you this with 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 anxiety. Um, so I have seen on my comment section some people saying that this is a false flag put out by Ukraine.
A false flag put out by Ukraine through Belarus using Russian
That's the
drones.
point. That's the point.
Um,
I'm so pleased. I'm so pleased you said that because a false flag, if these were Ukrainian drones, they couldn't go through Belarus.
well, they'd be shot down.
They'd be shot down
Unless the Belarusians were in on
unless they're
it.
Belarusian.
No,
But
nonsense.
so it is
That's the
nonsense.
line. That's the line the Kremlin's been putting out.
Yes, well,
Um,
exactly.
and people echo it because it's people want to see a conspiracy in everything.
Well,
And
because it gives them a
clearly
sense of
not the case
control.
here.
Uh,
Yes, whereas there is no control and we all live in an anarchic sort of world.
well, you see, I was trying to work out what does what does Putin. Let's assume just for the
Hmm.
just for the purpose of this talk that Mr. Putin is alive. It makes it so much easier to refer to him
We'll forget the Smeg fridge.
as a living entity, as a living entity. So I've been trying to work out as a living entity what would it ben why would given the fact that his resources are running low,
Hmm.
given the fact that his money is running out, given the fact that his
Yeah.
petrol is running out, and given the fact that he's not really up to, although he's put out propaganda that he's making this huge amount of missiles this year, he's not up to speed on that either. Why
Hmm.
why would he want to risk bringing Poland into the war, or indeed bringing NATO into the war? I have some ideas of my own. Do you?
I think it really goes back to why would he risk starting this war in the first place? He believes he can win, and he believes that if he can get one of the European powers, one of the Baltics or Poland, to activate Article 5 over an incident which the United States under Trump would not want Article 5 to be activated, then perhaps he's aiming to fracture NATO.
NATO, yeah. That that that
Um,
that is a credible take. My other thought is that he's running out of check positions.
yes,
And,
he's
and as he's not going to be able to decisively win in Ukraine, he could expand this and say, oh, actually, now we're being threatened by NATO. So all the things I said about
well,
NATO threatening Russia have proven to be true. So it's a
Russia's
audience thing again.
a big line of Russian propaganda is that they say they are at war with NATO already. You know, they parade captured Allied vehicles, British, French, American, through Moscow. They say a big line is we've fought all of NATO and we're holding our ground, which is, of course, not the case. They're fighting Ukraine, a much smaller country that's armed in a big way by NATO, but not entirely. Of course, Ukraine makes 85% of its own drones. So this is just going to repeat that line. And now, with this provocation, the only way that NATO, but Europe especially, should respond is decisively, quickly, and to a certain extent, disproportionately.
Hmm. So
Because the only
when a
way
Russian fighter jet flew into Turkish air, the Turks blew it
shut
up.
it down.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Russians didn't try that again.
And the message was clear.
Yeah, the
Um,
message is clear. Yeah.
it's not so easy with drones, is it? Because you can shoot them down. The Poles didn't shoot all of them down. I know.
No, they didn't. The Ukrainians probably would have done a better job, but then again, they've had 3 years of experience shooting these things down. And we were using F-35s with very expensive missiles to shoot them down rather than Gepards, for example, or simply interceptor drones. Now, there is a proposal which Europe could do, which would sort of echo the Turkish response. If the Turkish response is to punch the bully in the face, which is really how you should deal with this sort of thing, because that's how Russia acts and thinks on the international level. It likes to throw its weight around and it acts like a schoolyard bully. Turkey shot down that Russian jet.
Hmm.
Russia didn't try it again. Now, there's a proposal the Ukrainians came up with. It's a couple of years old now, called Sky Shield. And that involves splitting Ukraine into 3 sectors. It's also called the IAPZ, the International. Oh God, I've forgotten the acronym. We'll
Airport
just call
something.
them,
Yeah.
yeah, protection zone.
Air zone. Yeah.
We'll call it green, yellow, red, right? So green is from about 100 kilometers east of Kyiv, all the way to the western border of Ukraine. That would be patrolled by Allied aircraft, whose aim is to shoot down Russian drones and missiles.
Mm.
And that covers 4 of Ukraine's nuclear facilities. The yellow zone from that line east is purely dealt with by the Ukrainian Air Force and Ukrainian forces themselves. And that is an enormous area of land. The red zone are the temporarily occupied areas of Ukraine. Russian fighter jets, manned Russian fighter jets, cannot get to the green zone as it stands at the moment. They will simply be shot down far before they get there. But drones and missiles can and do.
Hmm.
And there is international precedent for this kind of operation, this kind of allied, almost closing the skies, but not quite, only closing the skies to unmanned
Yeah.
objects.
So what this is doing is suggesting there's a safety net. So at no point would international aircraft be facing Russian aircraft.
Indeed,
So that
exactly,
there wouldn't be a chance of shooting a Russian aircraft and starting World War III.
exactly.
Yeah. It's simply a matter of helping to get rid of these drones. So
Mhm.
not unlike Britain and France scrambling to help Israel when
Exactly like that.
yeah.
Exactly like that. And there's precedent. Obviously, there's that, and that's something that's often brought up. Allied jets shooting down Iranian drones and missiles headed to Israel. There's also NATO air policing of the Baltic Sea region, very close to Russia as well. NATO and Russian Air Force operating in the same skies and at opposing ends of the Syrian civil war. And there were no air-to-air incidents in that war. There were other incidents. And as you've said, US and allied assistance shooting down Iranian drones into Israel. So the plan involves an allied CAT, that's close air patrol,
But that
about
assumes
120 jets.
it sort of assumes that Putin's interest is in Ukraine. If Putin's interest is now spreading to give the impression that this is about a war with NATO, then you can't assume that the Russian jets are not going to try and intercept the
Well, they
international.
couldn't reach them.
Well, that's what you say. They
They
could
couldn't they
they
couldn't
could reach them
get
by
through the
going
green zone.
and they could also reach them by going through Belarus.
If they wanted to do that. But this is calling Putin's bluff, and I don't think he's going to do it. He didn't try it again with the Turks after they shot down his jet in 2015, and he's not going to try it here. He talks a lot of bluster, but when really tested, and this is something that Galeotti says, Professor Galeotti, the Russia watcher, he dithers.
Mhm.
And Belarus certainly doesn't want to get involved in this conflict. Lukashenko would rather stay in power, and Belarus getting involved in any more of a way that it already is, certainly Belarusian troops, would be a huge risk to his regime. And it's affordable, and it's something that Europeans could do without American involvement beyond buying American weapons.
Yes. One
It's
of
legal.
yes. One of the great problems with the Russian Empire is that it was never intentional. So all the satellite states got a lot of money and a lot of support, whereas the main body of Russia never did, unlike other more successful empires where all the money ended up in the middle. Um, so I can see why Belarus would be only too happy to keep the temperature down and nod along like a
Yes,
poodle, because it's a very pampered poodle, unfortunately.
it is. Well, as far as Lukashenko is concerned, yes. As far as the people of Belarus, not so much.
That's another matter. Though the people of Belarus possibly, I've not looked into it, but I know people in the in the east of Russia seem quite surprised by the fact that in Ukraine they have washing machines and so on. And you think, well, how on earth could you?
Well,
Um,
if Russia had invested in infrastructure and building a reasonable sort of country in the wake of, well, let's not say the 90s, because the 90s were a period of absolute chaos. But say when Putin came to power and the decade or so after that, then maybe that would not be the case.
there's a really nice story.
But
Yeah, there's
it
a really nice
is.
story when Putin came to power, and he got hold of his first huge amount of money. What was that, 1 million or something or so? And and he wrote to all the Russian embassies and people saying, "How do I spend this? What do I do with it?" He doesn't need this money, but he steals and grabs what he can. It's about the joy of the theft rather than um, the need for lots of money and lots of stuff. He doesn't need Ukraine. One of the things which is peddled by a lot of
Well,
rather foolish Russian, rather foolish Western commentators is that Russia needs Donbass, and it doesn't. It's got plenty of agricultural and industrial land of its own. It doesn't need
the
Donbass.
Donbass is so ruined at the
Yes,
moment. It'll be decades before its economic output
can
will
even
ever pay for the amount of blood and treasure that the Russians have spent trying to seize it. But it's not about the realism. It's not about the hard mathematics. This is about social constructivism. This is about Putin's perception of the world and perception of the kind of country that Russia is. He demands that Russia be seen as a great power, as a superpower. And the economic realities are simply that it is not.
so so it, so do you think this air cover
Hmm.
is credible? And because now people are talking about an air cover for Poland as well, by the way.
Well, Poland's instituted a no-fly zone along its eastern border now,
Yes.
and that should really cross into Ukraine because the Poles were caught unawares, but people in outside of Ukraine don't have experience in this kind of saturation drone warfare, and it was only 19. That's not an enormous number,
No.
and I think three or four were shot down. Again, not fantastic. I mean, Ukraine has layers and layers of air defense in multiple different fields. You've got soft kill through electronic warfare, making the drones veer off of target, hard kill systems in a variety of different ways, everything from Patriot missiles to a guy on the back of a truck with a dishka, and that's layered throughout this enormous country. So they've become really very effective at shooting them down, but it's a constant cat and mouse game between the designers of the drones, making them faster, fly higher, maneuver in unpredictable ways, and the Ukrainians trying to shoot them down. So now they've gotten more lethal, and now they're harder for everybody else to work on. It's Yeah, I'm not surprised that they couldn't shoot down as many as perhaps we would have wanted to. Also, we don't want to use Patriot missiles on these things because the economics are such that unless they're going to hit a populated area, it's just not worth it. And perhaps that was the decision that was made. Perhaps they saw that these were drones that were generally reconnaissance drones. Perhaps they weren't going towards, although some houses were damaged by debris, and they decided against shooting them down because they were, well, they're just going to run out of fuel. Why waste the $1 million missile on the $40,000 drone?
So they could have been reconnaissance, which would explain the
They
limit
could have been reconnaissance drones, yes, but still a weapon.
and still a provocation.
Absolutely still, well, I would call it more a test than a provocation.
Yes.
They
Uh,
want to see how
the,
NATO's going to
the, the,
respond.
the the other thing I wanted to talk to you about was the attack on Kyiv and on the government buildings.
Hmm.
Um,
One was hit by an Iskander whose warhead didn't go off.
really? I didn't know that.
Yes, that's what I've heard. Uh, that's quite interesting. Whether or not it was, a dummy round fired on purpose as a sort of message. But I mean, it's not the first time they've hit government buildings throughout the country.
Yes, but
That's the first time they've hit government buildings with an air raid in the capital. But at the start of the
is this a
full-scale invasion,
failure
there were
of the
running gun battles taking place.
is this a failure of the Kyiv defenses, or is it about a more targeted hit?
I mean,
Because the failure of the
it
Kyiv
should
defenses,
have been shot down.
yeah.
Absolutely.
But
I mean,
we haven't been investing enough as so because of the Trump mess at the beginning of
yeah.
the year. The
Well, yeah, and this is the unfortunate reality that Ukrainians are facing. They have to ration the very high-end anti-aircraft stuff, the things, the Patriots, etc., things that can shoot down an Iskander or a cruise missile, because they don't know how many they have, and it's quite a reasonable cost-benefit analysis. Are you going to save the government building, which it's the middle of the night, not very many people are in? Or are you going to save the factory or the apartment block?
hmm,
The government building's a symbol, yes, but it is not necessarily driving the war effort forwards. Whereas the Antonov plant certainly is.
yes, and the Turkish drone factory.
Oh, the Bayraktar factory. Yeah, I mean, that's something that the Russians would certainly want to hit. But these factories, or at least the small ones, they're scattered in their thousands all over the country. Tiny little places, or a cottage industry of arms manufacture, and often done by volunteers. And this is what so many in the West aren't quite getting about Ukraine, is that they understand the consequences of real defeat, as in real defeat, the Russians take over the country. There would be massacres in the same vein that we saw in Bucha, in Izium. I've been to the mass graves in Izium. I've been to the memorial in Bucha, and they recognize that they cannot afford to lose, because if they do, well, then they'll die. It's not That's not something you can negotiate over with an opponent, an enemy that is determined to commit a sort of extirpation of your identity and your future.
I want while I've got you here, I want to lay to rest a ghost which keeps coming up again in my YouTube
Hmm.
feed. And that is that the butcher thing again is a sort of false flag which was
Nonsense.
done by Ukraine. What is your evidence that it isn't?
Well, I've been there.
Hmm.
I've spoken to the people from Bucha. One of my very good friends was there, and he remembers it well. I mean, the shopping, the supermarket I used to go to when I go to when I'm in Ukraine was looted and burned by the Russians. People were shot in their cars driving down the road. There was a young couple that was murdered. They were just driving in, a dangerous area, but the Russians gunned them down. They were in their 20s. This is something that we have seen take place time and time again across the country. I went to a mass grave in Izium where the bodies were being exhumed as I was there.
Yes.
It is, and to anybody saying this, if they have the stones and the cash, you can go to Kyiv. They don't tell you this, but you can just go and you can ask. You can ask the people there. And that's what I would encourage people to do. Because the propaganda, the disinformation that Russia is putting out is designed to make them believe nothing. And
Mm.
if you believe nothing, then anything can be done to you.
Yes, exactly.
If you believe nothing, then nothing matters. And it becomes easy to abandon empathy and to abandon any idea of good, evil, right, and wrong, and to just live as a drone. And that is the state that Vladimir Putin has built. Divorce yourself from any idea of being involved in politics. We will simply make you slightly wealthier. Well, that's no longer true. And to what he's doing to the West, to the democracies, is actively trying to make people lose faith in democracy at all. And democracy has its many faults, and the democracies are perhaps, they certainly feel tired. There isn't uh, the right kind of future for people's children. We can no longer hold to the promise that your children's future will be better. But what we need is reform of democracy, not reform the party.
I'm so pleased you
They're
clarified
going
that.
the other way.
I was going to say on
um,
and then we have to stop because I'm very much mindful of your previous career
mm,
and 900 people arrested this
yes.
weekend. Do you have
Oh,
any
yeah,
comment on?
Palestine Action.
I'm so sorry. Do you
Well,
have
I
any?
went to the one. No, no, I went to the Palestine Action event previously. Last weekend, I had to pick up a desk, so I couldn't go. But the one
Desks get in
previously
the way,
was, and I did a video on it, which you can find on my YouTube channel, Dictators v Democrats, and it moved me, and I was quite upset, really. I
don't
spoke with two people, Ginny and Melanie. Um, they looked like they should be baking cakes instead of getting arrested.
Did they get arrested?
They did, yes, they
No.
did. And I don't support Palestine Action. I don't support what they did. It was criminal. It was wrong. It was foolish. Organizations like Palestine Action have attacked factories that were refurbishing vehicles for Ukraine, for example. That had nothing to do with Israel.
Yeah.
I predict influence from men with snow on their boots on that one, but I can't back that up. And I just felt that this isn't something that should be happening in a healthy democracy. We've had this kind of direct action before where protest groups have committed criminal damage, because that's basically what happened on the RAF base, a form of criminal damage. And have we prescribed them as terrorists in the same vein as Al Qaeda, in the same vein as Hamas,
And ISIS.
in the same, and ISIS and the Wagner group? No, no, because their aim is not to commit a mass murder. Their aim is not to destroy people's lives. Their aim was to protest. And yes, it was a criminal way in which they did it, and those who did it should be punished to the fullest extent of the law, should they be found guilty. However, people holding up a sign expressing support for an organization which has not set out to kill anybody, no, I found it deeply troubling. And I thought at the time that were I an officer there, it was probably one of the things that would have pushed me over the edge to leaving. Not because, just because it's an order that I would not, oh, you can't be ordered to arrest somebody, but I wouldn't feel comfortable
Yeah.
in doing that. And that's down to the government, the police officers there, and uh, it was quite ugly, the abuse that they received, and they're just carrying out the duty of their office. they're not hurting anybody either, unless there is resistance and violence, etc. But there wasn't. People see them carrying protesters away with a gaggle of police officers. Well, that's the safest way to carry somebody who has sort of gone floppy, is a big number of people. And just the whole thing was quite ugly.
Yeah.
It's
It's
ugly that they're getting arrested,
also
and
a huge waste of police time.
oh, huge waste of resources, huge, massive. And but if the Home Secretary, who has said earlier, if you knew what I know, you would support the proscription of Palestine action, but I can't say anything because it's going through the courts. Well, you are the Home Secretary. Your government has an enormous majority. You can basically pass what you want. Pass a piece of legislation saying that under certain circumstances, the Home Secretary can release information to the public, even though a court case is going ahead.
Yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
then tell us.
Tell us,
Tell us why.
because I'm
Because
sure the
people don't
majority of
understand.
because the majority of those people who were arrested for holding up placards would not support something if they were to know that there was something
Absolutely.
deeply dark
Absolutely.
on in the background. But I'm not convinced there is. That's my concern. Maybe I
I
should
don't know.
voice that. Um,
Nothing could surprise me. I mean, but if there is, then tell people so
yeah,
that they don't go and get themselves a criminal record for. And some of the people I spoke to there say, well, I don't particularly support Palestine action, but I'm holding up this sign because I'm very against their prescription and I think it's an assault on free speech.
yes, yes. Look, we must stop there. We've been talking. We can rabbit on for a long time,
We
but
could.
it really is nice to see you, Theo.
Thank you very much, Professor. Thank you.
And it would be nice to catch up again at some point soon.
Sure thing.
I shouldn't ask you, should I? Are you
What?
off to Ukraine again soon?
I'm trying to build up another round of cash to go, but hopefully, before the year is out, but we'll see. I do go into a deeper dive on the Sky Shield program, both on my Substack, you can find it under the archives, and I did a YouTube video on my channel, Dictators v Democrats, yesterday, where I go into also the legalities behind it and the costing.
Hmm.
So
Yes.
we can do it. We
I,
should
I think
do it
people are worried about
because we
but
need to punch the bully in the face.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And we need to protect people in Ukraine.
In
Um,
Ukraine. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I my hunch is if Putin thinks Ukraine is going to fall soon, he's living in fantasy land.
Oh, no,
It's not.
he is.
And you think of Churchill, we shall fight them on the beaches, blah blah blah, and I cannot imagine, even if Ukraine were overrun, that it would capitulate.
Oh no, in the temporarily occupied areas, there's ongoing partisan activity. Russian soldiers do not move about in safety there. We
Yes,
don't hear about it because it's very difficult for that information to get out. But you hear of Russian senior officers being assassinated when drones hit Russian oil facilities. Well, there's partisan activity involved.
yes, yes. Okay, we will talk later. See you.
Thank you,
Bye
Professor.
bye.
Wonderful to see you. Ta-da. Bye-bye.